Hello and welcome to the Open Space Committee. This is Betsy Morgenthaler, and I'm proposing tonight that we commence the meeting with a slightly different roll call, and that's roll call and introductions. Each one of us around this table first, in respect to the presence of our new town manager, Darcy Smith. Following committee introductions, I'm going to go to oral communications in deference to Carter War, who is calling in and able to be with us for about 10 minutes only. And then we'll come back, and perhaps if Darcy chooses to, she will use that opportunity to do introduction of herself as well. I do want to say that our IT system is working, and so much the better for Darcy's arrival. Thank you very much. So maybe starting with Dell at the end of the table. Welcome, Dell Maxwell.
Push something to make this?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. That's it. Okay, I'm Dell Maxwell, and this is my first committee meeting here, so I'm happy and proud to be part of this. Anyway, I've been living in Portola Valley since 1995, a pretty long time, I guess. And I was on a committee prior to this, actually with Judy Murphy before, the Water Conservation Committee. And so I was on that for a while, and we actually organized this big tour for gardens that had water-wise characteristics to them. And it was just a local Portola Valley tour. How long ago was that? Who knows, 15 years ago. Anyway, when that committee turned into the Sustainability Committee, I got off of it because I didn't feel like it was something that I knew enough about in order to participate properly. So one thing I really do care about is open space. I'm the president of our family foundation. And one of the things that we focus on is the protection of important places. So I've worked with an awful lot of different land trusts. And around here would be Post, Rin Agricultural Land Trust, Sonoma Land Trust, Trust for Public Land, Big Sur, Amamutsan, Eastern Sierras, and Hawaii Land Trust. So I kind of know how that operates, and I hope I can be helpful in that domain. So anyway, I read over all of the materials. I'm here probably to listen more than speak because it's my first day, and so I just want to see how things operate here and participate when it's appropriate.
We welcome fresh perspectives, so don't hold back. Thank you, Dell, and a really hearty, warm welcome. We have no doubt you'll have lots to contribute. So Terry and then Gary.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody again. Terry Lee. I've been in the Bay Area since 1986, mostly in Palo Alto and Woodside, and since 2010 in Portola Valley. I've been on the Trails and Paths Committee for a long time, not currently, but previous chair. Been previous chair of the Open Space Committee as well. But I'm honored to be a member today. And I will editorialize and say that I'm very happy to be part of the welcoming committee. Darcy, who I've known since she reminded me since high school days in San Mateo. We also share Stanford, but I'm so excited to be part of the welcoming committee for Darcy here in PV. So thank you.
It's really nice. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, Gary Nielsen. And I've been in town for about 55 years, something like that. And been associated with the town for 55 or 6 years, something like that. So I'm not going to go into every one of those years, but as always, I'm always happy to be here and continue on as long as I can stand. Thank you.
Do I go?
Yeah,
Okay. Nona Chariello. I have been on this committee for 13 years now and was a previous chair. And I also serve on conservation and have done so for about 10 years. I retired last year from Stanford, where I worked for 35 years. And so now I'm kind of like fully focused on the town. I should mention that Gary undersells himself as always. He's actually been on this committee for 26 years.
Oh,
Yeah, I checked, and he is the recipient of one of the town's founders awards. I think maybe even the first of those. Anyway, we have a lot of town and institutional memory on this committee, as well as a lot of fresh perspectives. And I think that's one of the really great things about this committee. The other thing that I did in the last year is I was a member of the Ad Hoc Site Evaluation Committee, which is basically on hold at this point, I think, but has worked really closely with this committee too.
Fantastic. Jackie?
I think I'm one of the fresh perspectives.
Oh, sorry, we're sharing.
No, that's okay. Dell, I'm so glad you're here because I'm no longer the newbie. But I'm a very recent addition to the committee, delighted to be here. I've been in Portola Valley since 2011, so it's been a minute. But this is the first time I've actively been involved in the town, and I feel like this is just the right time. I'm also a docent at Jasper Ridge, so passionate about land stewardship, conservancy, and all those good things. And one of the reasons we chose Portola Valley was because of the town character, which I'm eager to safeguard and continue.
Are you out there? Still with us?
Yeah. Yes.
Carter, if you could unmute yourself.
I am unmuted, aren't I?
Oh, you, excellent. You're with us. Okay. Carter's
Oh,
calling.
I'm calling in because I'm on my way to a funeral for a friend of mine. So, I'm Carter War. Lived in Portola Valley since 1988. Been practicing architecture in Portola Valley since '89. I was first appointed, to the ASCC, the Architecture and Site Control Commission, in 1991. Served there for about 22 years. I'm back on the ASCC for the last 2 years. I'm really pleased to be a part of the open space, acquisition, committee, to help guide that. Probably my best role in town is knowing where the bodies are buried. So, knowing the properties, the topography, the geology, pretty intimately after pursuing about 1,400 projects in town. I'd like, everyone on the committee to, feel comfortable, reaching out in a Brown Act compliant way to help you understand, any questions you might have about land and land use.
Super. Thanks, Carter. And Betsy Morgan Thaler here. I have been in Portola Valley since 2013 only, but prior to that moved in '81 to just on the other side of town boundaries, Woodside, but spiritually Portola Valley in '81. And then after 15 years, moved down to Palo Alto for a chapter, a good chapter it was too, but back up here. And I am so delighted to be back. After following the town goings on for a while and recognizing that all the fun was happening at the Open Space Committee, I joined several years ago and found myself sitting in the chair seat for whatever reasons. In any case, it's been a wonderful tenure, and like Jackie and Nona and Gary, also come from Jasper Ridge docent program and a pretty long 35-year legacy up there. So that's the experience relative to this committee, and I have other board experience, but that's it for now. With that, Carter, we were going to open oral communications, and I thought I'd call on you first so that you can get to the spot you're going tonight.
Great. Thank you very much for recognizing me early. I had some recommendations, associated with, kind of the meat and potatoes of this meeting. And my recommendation, is really, associated with how the Open Space Acquisition Committee, can help advise the town council, on an appropriate use, of some of our open space funds to help them through their emergency, fiscal situation moving forward. So my recommendation, rather than, just outright gifting the general fund, the tax income, the 2%, of the utility tax, to the town, I'd actually prefer, that the open space, committee make a recommendation that that gift, be 50%, of the taxes and income of that fund, or $200,000, whichever is the lesser, for 3 years. And that grant will only be authorized, through, voter approval, of a diversion of the, temporary diversion of the restricted fund, in the absence of any repayment of those, diversions.
Jay Carter, thank you very much for putting the time and thought into the proposal and for taking the trouble to sign in from a parking lot. I appreciate it. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Carter before he signs off? Otherwise, trust us to incorporate your thinking into what will become a consensus letter.
Okay.
Position well articulated. There appear to be no immediate questions, but thank you for debriefing me on it. Gary has one.
Yeah, Gary here. 50%, you mean instead of a full 2%, you're talking about 1%?
No, yeah, well, what I'm saying, yes, I want to make sure that the open space fund, stays effectively even against, a hedge on inflation. The $200,000, if it, grew to that much, would represent about 2.2%, of the current fund balance. So the reason for my thinking there is to stay ahead of inflation. Although we know that real estate, appreciation, is higher than the CPI. But,
It has been. Can I clarify a question too on Terry's question? Is it a percentage of the 2% utility tax or utility user tax, or is it 50% of the total income to the fund, including interest?
yes, it's
The latter.
it would be, it would be the latter. It would be the total income. So it would include the investment income, and also the tax income. It'd be 50% of that, or $200,000, whichever is the lesser.
That's clear. And so is your rationale. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the questions, Gary and Terry. With that, we wish you well tonight.
Thank you. Sign off.
Okay. And that brings us to other oral communications and Darcy Smith.
Hello.
Hello.
Really hope
It's
these microphones work.
You're on.
Yep, I'm on. Darcy Smith, your new town manager. I am so excited to meet you guys. I've been making the rounds to other committees, and I must say, yes, you are the fun, energetic committee, even though we have someone who's been here a very long time. We don't show it. I'm so happy to be here. And first, I want to thank you for giving so much back to the community. Without the volunteers, well, really, this town was ceased to have been founded, really, for all of us to enjoy almost, 5 decades later. So I love open space. I grew up in a rural town north of Northern California, Auburn. There was open space all around me. At one point, I lived on 5 acres. I didn't know until I came to Stanford in 1994 that there was urbanization, and it meant you didn't have a ton of open space. So when I was at Stanford, I came over here a lot because it was just culture shock going from a very rural area to Palo Alto. So I just want you to know I'm here to serve you, and I want to meet with all of you. Some of you I already know, but I will extend the invitation to come to my office. So I'll come out on a hike with you or meet you, because I really want to understand what you love about living here, what you never want to lose, and what you see as some of the issues facing the town. And I understand one's agendized for tonight, so I can come back up later and present a little bit more information, researching this topic in more detail. But I'm here to preserve the town and maintain the small town charm, the rural character, and the open space that you and your predecessors have really fought so hard over many decades to preserve. And it's truly a gem here, so it's a real privilege to be here and to support the town to maintain that.
Thank you so much, Darcy. Your interest in Portola Valley suggests that you have a deep appreciation for who we are already. I think you've come to the right place if you're looking for what we all love most about the town, and about to hear more of it too. But before we get to the meat of our meeting, I would like to ask if there are any more oral communications, either online or here. And seeing none, let's move to approving the minutes. I will be asking for edits, but first I want to call out both Jackie and Nona for special thanks in their collaboration to create them. Anyone who reads these minutes will see immediately the labor of great respect and effective communication it represents. I really rarely ever have seen such marvelous minutes. So if there are any edits after that comment, I welcome them, and otherwise a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Terry. A second?
Second.
Terry, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And now to the, what I called new old business. The Open Space Committee perspective on addressing the town's financial crisis. A little preamble before I invite committee participation in the edit of this draft letter. And that is really predominantly addressed to those who have not been attending the finance and town council meetings. I just want to take a few minutes to afford some background that leads to today's Open Space Committee conversation and letter. Collectively, we are the town, and the town is at a difficult crossroads. Late last summer, following the spring arrival of our new finance director, Tony McFarland, he shared with us, the town council and finance committee, that the general fund accounting was not in order. The bottom line had been overstated by 3.8 million. Our reserves would be non-existent within the year. Simultaneously, we were heading into a period of escalating sheriff's contract costs, though that shouldn't be conflated with what amounted to years of inadequate fiscal account keeping and reporting. We realize that it has been and continues to be a daunting task for finance staff to bring our financials up to date. A detailed understanding of the present and ability to make appropriate choices for the future is coming, but it is not here. Substantial uncertainty remains past, present, and future. The town needs to solve a current problem, a current year budget shortfall projected to be roughly a couple $100,000, a next year projected shortfall of somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million. Without reserves, deficit spending is problematic. So the town staff, council, and finance committee are appropriately looking at all the options. The aim is to place before Portola Valley residents next fall, 26, the ballot measure that brings fiscal relief and the one that is most likely to pass. A combination of the two. We know enough today to contribute to a short-term solution. In the absence of community accessible, detailed, up-to-date financials and upon which the town can forecast the coming years with confidence, a medium or longer-term fix is not yet possible, and proceeding as if it were would be premature. The Open Space Committee wants to underscore that we would like to contribute to envisioning a path forward that is balanced, that affirms the community's commitment to open space, and that we can all live with. So the draft letter to the town council is our attempt to represent one possible path, and it is on the table to be grappled with by the full committee. With that, I'd like to ask the committee, my committee colleagues, to weigh in with your questions and full discussion of the draft we have in our hands. And I should also greatly thank Nona. And Nona and I worked together to put this letter together. So we want to listen to your responses and add in, it was hard to come up with a proposal, I will say. It was very hard. So we welcome your input. It will be a fuller and more complete letter with it. We can popcorn, and then I will just call on people. Would you like to go? Or Gary? Yeah, because no, you were very involved.
I have a bunch of thoughts on this, and I won't express an opinion at this point because I think that should come later. Except to say that I think we all have a responsibility to make sure that the town has sound financial footing. And to the extent that we can do so without harming our open space commitment, I think that that is worth considering. The letter itself, I think, goes maybe farther than it needs to, but that was driven by the timing of what we see as the decisions that are coming very soon. And so one way of thinking about this is to say, how far would you possibly go? And I think maybe this letter kind of lays that out. The problem, though, is that it envisions something without knowing everything. And, we know that there is a budget shortfall, but we don't really know how much it is or for how long it will be that. We know that it went from something like 3.8 million to something like 1.5 million but something like, or maybe nothing like over several years, which suggests to me that this is not necessarily a long-term problem in the sense that, the new financial team brings a lot of knowledge to this and may be able to sort of work us out of this over some short number of years. I think the biggest problem that I have is that we're talking about putting a ballot measure together for next November before I think all the audits will be completed. And I know that has been a target, but I also have heard that the audits may not be completed by then. And so what worries me is that whatever we do needs to be approved by the voters. And I would like them to have all of the information that is needed. So, I think we've envisioned a big sacrifice from the open space income, which maybe the Open Space Fund could tolerate, but I'd like to be really sure that it's necessary. I think that's.
Thank you, Nona. Gary?
Well, I want to congratulate the two of you for coming up with a very, very well stated proposition here. And I would I would pretty much support it, at least as a starting point, as it is. I like what you proposed in there. And that means the redirection of the 2% UUT. But for just 3 years, I think that 3 years could be changed to 2, 4, something like that. I think there's room to spare there. Some statements that you two made in there, I appreciate very much, such as the need for us to do something, our open space and our committee and even our fund, to help sustainability of our financial problems. That's really important. It's measured up front, I think.
If you could repeat that, I didn't quite catch what you said,
Oh, that,
this last point.
yeah, that the point that the two of you made, that it's very, very important to make sure that this town achieves sustainability financially again, and that we can take a part in that.
Thank you.
Okay, anyway, that's the important point. Sustainability of the town's finances. I think Carter pointed this out too. He was talking about of the 2%, but I think he was throwing in the interest from the Open Space Fund itself, which is another 300,000. But only 50% of that, which would come over his idea of 200,000. I don't think we can be too cheap here. And so I'm going to go for the whole thing as stated. 2% over 3 years, which is roughly 340,000 per year. So over the 3 years, it's $1 million. That used to be a big number, but it's not so much anymore.
I'd pick it up.
Okay. Oh, yes, you've mentioned, the two of you mentioned, as a way of proof that our open space activities and fund have been successful, that we have over a period of time added 1,900 acres. I didn't realize it was that much, but when I think of
that's-
Windy Hill, yeah, and
Inclusive.
yeah, a couple of the others. So I'm saying that I would agree that we want to protect the open space fund as well as we can. Another point that you made, and this is something that maybe I'd forgotten or didn't know, but the importance of us to maintain the open space balance as best we can. Because this apparently been involved with inter-fund borrowing. And I've kind of forgotten that. And so it's a safety valve that we have built up in our open space fund, as long as we get paid back. And there's stipulations on how and when that's to be done. Very good point, an important point. Though there was another statement in there, something about we should maintain or have a separate account for the open space fund. I thought we had one.
We have a
24,
separate
can you-
fund. We have a separate fund. And just like the in lieu housing fund, it is a separate fund, but it is a commingled account with the general fund. And that has been the way it's been handled up until now. I did attach, for those of us who are present here, I attached a Senate Bill 165 which suggests that that is out of order with existing law. And it is also out of order with the ballot measure that the residents voted on multiple times that calls for a separate account. So both to achieve consistence with the voters' will and by matter of California law, we would want to rectify that, I think, before we go forward. Darcy would like to contribute something. Please do.
Well, I've been living and breathing revenue enhancement options for pretty much since I started, before I started.
I have a feeling it'll go on a little
Yeah,
longer.
so I'll just correct one thing. And then if you don't mind, can I just take a few minutes to give you just some basic information about the user utility tax? How it
Wonderful
exists?
that you're
Okay.
here.
So I can assure you that now they're separate funds. Maybe before I was here, before Tony was here, they were commingled, but definitely the appropriate and legally mandated practice, as you point out, is to not commingle. So I can assure you they're separate. And
They're separate accounts,
They're separate accounts, yeah.
a
One's-
separate banking account with separate numbers
Well,
as of today?
Okay, that I don't know, but for our accounting purposes, they're separate
Oh, they're
funds.
separate funds. No, I get that. I
Funds.
think they've been separate funds for quite some time.
Typically, we do merge bank accounts, but one thing I want to mention is that the interest from the open space fund goes back into the open space fund. So, and we're actually getting a lot of interest. I met with Tony at 4:30 and he rattled off some number that I think was like 400,000 a year in interest. So that's a pretty good. I said, wow, that's a lot. He said, yeah, we're getting 4%. So he is minding the shop. That's pretty good interest. But often towns just have one or two bank accounts. You know, we are heavily regulated in what we can invest in. So sometimes we send money off to different investment funds, but we have sort of your everyday checking account, if you will, and that lets us pay the bills. And then we have different savings account, you know, they're diversified, but they are heavily regulated in what we can invest in. We can't invest in, for example, like money markets and things that
Right.
an average consumer can invest in. But the other thing I wanted to mention about the UUT, just to clarify, is that we have currently $489,000 in revenue estimated for the open space UUT. But UUTs are an area that have been, I'll just say, subject to court interpretation and legal challenges. And so when I met with the city team today, they gave a lower number of what potentially could be diverted. This is just the 2%, which is $327,000. And I went, you know, I said, the math's not making sense. Can you explain that? Because you gave me the higher number. So the town attorney thinks it would be potentially problematic if all of it was diverted, because the water tax specifically is one area that's been more litigated in the public arena. So she just said, like, don't touch that. You know, it's fire. So it would be about $327,000. But it's really important to note that the council would have to take specific action to suspend the special open space tax on its own. So that would be done first by the council. And again, there's complexity there. And then separately, the council or citizens group would place a new measure to divert that 2% on the ballot. So I just want to explain, it's really tricky to do that. Because again, the council would have to suspend it, because the way the UUT is currently adopted is it's a maximum, right? So the council can lower taxes on its own, surprisingly. But then any new taxes have to go on the ballot. And this, if they did that though, it would be a 50% plus one vote. To again, suspend the 2% UUT going to the open space fund and then put a new ballot measure on the ballot to essentially create a new UUT, which would then go into the general fund. And I know that sounds really complicated and there's way more
It's
complexity
interesting.
than I can really explain in a few minutes. But I would just reiterate, the council is still in the preliminary stages. And at the next council meeting on the 27th, they'll be reviewing a smaller list of option, and the main goal of that meeting would be to move forward with voter polling. And that's sort of the next step in evaluating these options. The actual decision to place something on the ballot is not due. It's not due to the election official until August 7th, 2026. So the big amount of work will actually happen next summer. But that said, there's a huge amount of front-loaded work in terms of the survey work, presenting those survey results to council, having them give direction on which options should be placed on the ballot. But another thing I'll say is that with the ballot, it gets confusing to voters if you put more than one thing on. And so I'm sure you've been there where you go through your ballot, you're thinking, there's just too much on here. So most jurisdictions just choose to put one on. And you are correct that the finance director has identified a need of a minimum of $1 million, and that actually doesn't start till 7. But since you mentioned it, I just want to walk through sort of the why of that.
Before you get to that point, which is important, of course,
Mhm.
can I have a point of clarification?
Mhm.
489,000 and 327,000 of the utility user tax, they're both annual numbers. The distinction between them, I want to capture in your words.
Is that hold on, I'm looking at the staff report. The higher number, the 489,000, that includes all the utility.
Not including the one we do not currently, the internet utility.
internet,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's all utilities across the entirety of the tax
489,000 for open space.
for open space.
Yeah.
Okay, that explains why I was puzzled by that 350, but I got my 350 number straight off the finance committee. And I tried to double check it against the numbers that the town carries, but couldn't find them.
Yeah, and that was actually too high. It's 327, according to the finance director I just talked to. And again, that confused me,
And 327 is,
exclusive of the water.
oh, I see, okay.
You can't touch water. That's like, yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
okay.
it's too legally risky to mess with that water because it's been heavily litigated, and, sometimes cities have come ahead, more often they've lost. So we are advised by our town attorney, just don't touch that. Yeah.
So if, and this is a big question mark, there was to be a diversion of the 2%, the open space fund would continue to collect the water tax or?
Yes.
Yes.
I think
okay.
it would. I think, well, it assumes that the council could just suspend part of the UUT.
And that is my next
I shouldn't
question.
answer it because I'm not an attorney and we pay the town attorney a lot of money, but
When you
can
said, when you
tell
said
you
that the
it would
action.
be
oh, sorry,
suspended.
sorry. Excuse me. You said the council would have to take an action to suspend. That was the first step.
yes,
Does that precede the ballot measure?
that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Probably there's something that would have to happen, but I don't know.
Well, I was
Yeah.
looking at it from a standpoint of the voters, 2/3 majority that has directed 2% to the open space fund. And how can the action come from the council and not from the voters? And so that was my question. But if
So-
we don't need to answer it tonight, it's on the table and it's of
I can,
interest.
I can answer that because I
Okay.
did discuss that with the town attorney today. Council can always lower taxes, which seems odd when the voters have established it, especially for a purpose so important as open space. But only voters can establish new taxes. I guess that's just, I guess if for
Interesting.
some reason we had tons and tons of extra money,
I see.
then without going to the ballot, local councils can lower taxes.
That's a learning. Thank you very much for edifying.
I was just going to close by explaining more about how we got here, because I've been researching that a lot. And I would never want to throw another agency.
Darcy, sorry, we have one question from
yeah.
the dais.
So I just want a little clarification on the majority versus say supermajority. So if the ballot measure were to ask the voters if they want to redirect the 2% UUT from the open space fund to the general fund, would that require a 2/3 majority? And
Well-
so does this other approach mean that you only need a simple majority?
Well, according to the town attorney, and maybe this is a question for the council meeting because we don't have her here, that can't be done, what you just described. You can't place that on the ballot as you just described it to
Okay,
divert
I
this.
think our understanding that that was a possibility is based on the matrix that the finance committee put together.
Yeah, so they did that without town council.
Okay,
Attorney,
you.
attorney, council. And so, and we just, that just went to council last month. So now staff's been looking at it saying, okay, let's dig deeper and dig deeper. And that's what will be presented to council next Wednesday night.
Thank
great,
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because and I asked the exact question because, when you're running a ballot measure, every vote counts, every percentage point counts. And so, if again, the council first suspends the special open space tax on its own, because state law only requires voter approval for new taxes, not to reduce taxes, then the council would need to take action to essentially increase the general fund user utility tax from 5.5 to 7.5. And then that would be 50% plus one. But I guess I want to get back to, it would still only be $327,000. And a lot of this is, what is the one measure that would be the best to put forward to the voters so as not to confuse them? And hence I'll get back to, are we in a short-term structural budget deficit or a long-term structural budget deficit, right? And from what I can see, because I've again been unpacking a lot of this, it is permanent unless we find a solution to the sheriff's office, because that is really the pickle that has put us on this spot. And they increased our contract in 2022 by almost $1 million. And you might ask, well, why did they do that? I don't see more sheriffs out there. I don't see, cars are still speeding. As you know, we haven't had a new sheriff elected then. Bolana's left, and we've got Christina Corpus, and they started charging the town for operating costs, which they hadn't historically charged. Those are one big piece of it, about $400,000 to $500,000. But another thing, if you trace back the county supervisors, the sheriff's deputies have got a lot of raises. Police officers, sometimes this might shock you, but get somewhere from like a 10 to 20% raise annually. I know we're in the wrong business here, but in 1 year in 2022, the county supervisors approved a 10% pay increase for the deputies. And then every year they get another increase that's above the average CPI. So they're getting more, their equipment is getting more expensive. So again, I mentioned we're paying for operating costs. So we're paying a very high amount of money for their vehicles, for their equipment. Yeah, I'm sorry you choked, I know. And so that's an area of an uncertainty. The other thing, it wasn't just that. I think you've heard of the housing element, and there was a lot of money spent on that from the general fund. And then we had a lot of staff turnover. And when I look at my crystal ball of like, where are the potential expenditures in the future that we can't control? It's right what I described. It's the sheriff's contract, because we may have another sheriff and who knows what they want to do. But again, the costs way exceed inflation, just in the staffing, and then potential threats of litigation and the housing element implementation. That will get very expensive. There's a huge list of things we have to do, some of which we've been working on, but a lot of which hasn't even started yet. And that's very expensive for staff and consultant time. And then natural disasters. So we've actually spent a fair amount of our general fund on capital improvements. And if we have another big natural disaster, a big storm, we maintain all of our streets. So that could get very expensive. So that sums it up. So when we look at our crystal ball, it's a permanent budget deficit. A short-term fix might help, but it's not, our roof is still going to be leaking. And so that is where we are. Are there any questions on that?
Committee?
Yeah, I
think
have
not.
one. Yeah, I think I understand. We all understand all these other peripheral problems that have to be solved. Let me ask you one, we was talking about interfund transfers. Would it be possible, how about a interfund transfer of open space monies to the town general plan?
I don't think we
No
can do
election,
that
can
legally.
we can't do that?
I don't think you can transfer from a special fund,
Yeah,
general fund. Yeah, you can't.
so, have we been doing that?
Well, I
I
hope
understand-
not.
y-
We are working on the
That
audits.
was kind of my understanding that
Oh.
within 1 year?
Yeah.
Fiscal year, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
So-
sorry, there was a question about the audits. This is exciting. If you want to go to the finance committee next Tuesday at 4 PM, they'll be reviewing the 21 audit. Want to come or watch it on Zoom? And then the others will follow. They are scheduled to have 22, 23 in this December, early January, 23, 24, early summer, June, July. And then for the current schedule, have them done September, October. I know that's right before the election, but there is, once we get one done, the others should follow. Because that last one was like the hardest one to do. So that took a big lift and then we should be able to catch up.
If I might just volunteer something before we go back to the committee members. I wanted to respond to the short-term nature of our comments. I think it comes from two places. One is some lack of confidence in what's going to happen with the sheriff's contract, given all the stuff that's going on out there, and the real possibility that we might be in a renegotiation position at some point. The other place is really that after we get the audits complete, we will have the solid ground on which to create budgets that we can access, that the finance committee and town council have access to, that are robust and similar to ones that we see in our neighboring city to the north. That's very important in terms of forecasting needs going forward 2 and 4 and 5 years, and something we haven't been privileged to in about a decade, or even perhaps longer. And so having that kind of, giving the public the kind of confidence that we know what we're talking about, is further in the future than the ballot measure. And that's why to me, it makes a certain amount of sense to say, we're going to do this as an interim to what we're going to be providing. Then it gives you the chance, the great opportunity to use that time.
Yeah, and I should emphasize, there are other non-ballot measure options. Right now, the council's heavy work is to look at these ballot
Yeah,
measure
yeah.
options because the clock
lead
is
time,
ticking
right.
and the voter survey needs to be done as soon as possible. We'd really like to get that done in September so that we have information to know what would be best to move forward and invest more time and money in. But certainly there are lots of different options and some of them varying levels of financial contributions. And if you look at your list, there's a lot of non-fiscal options that we're looking at, like annexation that is fiscal, but a lot of the work is just geographical first.
Wonderful. Thank you
Any
for
other
the
questions?
insight there.
I would invite you to
Committee?
come to the council meeting or watch it next Wednesday because that's when have a more robust presentation on this.
We look forward to that. Thank you. Jackie, would you or Terry like to go next? Terry?
Well, could I
Or-
finish
oh,
up?
you haven't finished, Gary. Excuse-
Well, we came to kind of an impasse here. I think it's so complicated. I don't think my mind can go any further with it. I would say that if the Open Space Committee or fund can help the town to sustainability, we would go for it, or I would certainly encourage it. I wanted to say something about taxes too. Our founding fathers and mothers declared Oh, right, okay. You want me to repeat that? Okay. Our founding fathers and mother at the beginning declared that our town should be a low tax city. And so we were not extracting our share of the property taxes, so in light of wanting to be a low tax city. Nice thing to do. However, in 1915, 2015 rather, the state passed some legislation that was called TEA, Tax Equity Allocation. And it stated that the towns have to extract at least 7% of the property taxes, total taxes. The rest of it goes to the county and the state and so on. Well, we were below that. And they said, you folks in Portola Valley got to come up on the curve. And they sent us a check for, I think it was around $1 million to help make up for the funds that we should have extracted from our own property taxes. So just thinking about taxation in this town and the low tax city, wanting to be a low tax city, I think there's some headroom if we wanted to raise taxes along the line. So I think that can be part of the solution at one point. Okay, I think that was one. Yay for taxes. Huh?
Thank you, Gary. What do you think, Terry?
Um, I guess I would say I appreciate the spirit of the town and this committee wanting to contribute to helping solve, you know, a financial challenge we share. It's not someone else's challenge, it's our challenge. So I really appreciate the spirit behind the letter. I also really appreciate the additional information we're getting about voter polling that's coming up very soon, which I'm interpreting as, and I hope I'm not interpreting it wrong, but asking our community what their thoughts are about these kinds of issues, which sounds very valuable, so that we're not just relying on our own opinion or our own impression of what people think, but really asking our community what they think. I imagine I'm not the only one that's concerned that there's a perception that the deficit that we've heard about might be structural, not temporary. And that's important information because it suggests different kinds of solutions that might require a more permanent approach rather than just a temporary one. So again, no judgment about that, but just clarity and trying to understand, you know, what we're dealing with and realizing we're still in the process of learning more about the nature of the deficit that we're understanding. And so my instinct is that we still have some things to learn about the problem we're trying to solve. I love the spirit of putting everything on the table and talking about what we can do in the future with respect to this commitment to help contribute to a better solution. I think we recognize that we're not talking about invading the funds that we already have, which I think is a very important point, because that's already been addressed by voters, and we can't change that history. I don't think we want to. So my instinct is that if we have an opportunity to put forth a perspective from this committee representing our scope of responsibility, that the concepts we think are important may be more helpful than a specific analytical recommendation because there's so much information we don't know yet about how big the gap is. Is it how temporary versus permanent it is? And also what the voters in our own town are thinking. And I'd hate to put something out there based on what we think they're thinking without knowing, taking advantage of the opportunity to hear what they actually think this fall. So again, that's based on my understanding of what we've just learned. And I realize that my understanding may be incomplete or maybe even slightly off. But the most important thing, I guess I just want to say is I appreciate the spirit behind, number one, how much we all value open space, I think that's pretty universal. And how much I also appreciate the spirit of flexibility in trying to craft a solution that is not insensitive to a new reality we may have that we can't pretend isn't there, and or hopefully expressing some willingness to solution find and being open to what that might be. Sorry, I know it sounds a little not specific, but I'm actually just trying to be responsive to a problem that we're still, I think, understanding. So I hate to be overly prescriptive or certain about a solution when we're not even sure what the problem is. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. That was nicely expressed. A conceptual offering can kind of be stretched to fit. Would you have any limits to your conceptual offering?
Not right now. It's an interesting question. Not right now, only because when I think about the arc of what we've all experienced together, just learning about this, I'm not sure I could have imagined it. And I feel like we're all still in the process of learning more. Do I have more confidence today that it sounds like on track to getting more better insight to work with, which I think good information is the beginning of a real solution. I do actually have more confidence, which I'm grateful for. But I think the spirit behind this initial draft is a generous spirit based on what we thought we knew. It feels like there's a little bit more valuable information coming. And
A lot more.
yeah. And so I think I would prefer to be more flexible and more open to what we could be learning here in the upcoming months before trying to make a more specific recommendation on behalf of the open space constituents that we're trying to represent.
Thank you. Jackie and Dell?
I'm happy to make a couple of comments. So I love the idea that the Open Space Committee is offering a compromise. I think given what we've heard here tonight, we may be a little premature in offering a solution just because it seems to be a changing landscape and we're finding out more information. However, there are a couple of things that I think are really important to remember. One is the town voted to have this open space fund. We want those funds to be used to continue to provide open space. I think the work that the committee has done on the Fogarty property is really important to think about as well, because it's providing a creative solution to both open space and housing element requirements. And so I want to make sure we don't lose track of that, because it's not just, oh, look, we're providing open space. It's more, we're partnering with the town to make sure that we're meeting all of our different commitments in a way that safeguards the character of our town. So I liked that that was brought out in the letter. I want to make sure that we don't lose track of that. And I hope that when we get feedback from the community in these surveys, that that question is in fact asked to make sure that our voters are still supportive of those same priorities that we offer as a town. Because I agree. I think the tax burden, given the propensity of our population to high net worth, I think the tax burden potentially could be higher without, that's a question that we can take to the voters and ask. So I'd like to think about that as well, in terms of what are options that we're considering, as opposed to just saying, oh, let's redirect. So like Terry, I love the spirit. I love the generous spirit. I just want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to balance the needs of our town, our fiscal responsibilities, but also the needs of our community for open space.
Thank you. Thank you. Del.
Hi, well, I'm just beginning to realize how complex all of these things are.
It really is. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, because not having been in on a lot of these conversations, I wasn't privy to all of that. In principle, in the letter, I think the redirection is not a bad idea because it does imply there's a certain amount of generosity and the willingness to step forward on the part of the open space folks but in a bounded way, right? If you're talking about 3 years, that's not going to be major damage. But it doesn't seem clear what the legal format of that can be, right? Like, how would you actually do that? It seems like it's more complicated than just saying, okay, we'll just do it, right? So
If that's a question,
yeah, it is.
the way that it would work, and we've done this in the past, I think we mentioned it in the letter, there can be a reversion, so you can actually vote as a community to have it to segue 2% to the general fund and have it revert back to status quo, meaning the open space fund in a certain number of years. And we did something somewhat similar with the general fund tax that lowered and then bounced back to its prior higher
Right,
fee.
right.
So those
Yeah.
reversion efforts are possible would make it.
Yeah, that seems reasonable, and I think that might actually smooth the way for talking about tax increase. Because sometimes people have to step up with the spirit of generosity first before other people are willing to join into that. And if it means raising their own taxes, it's kind of a sore subject for most everybody. But if we're talking about things like an increase of $1 million for the sheriff's department, I mean, we have to have the sheriffs, right? And we're going to have to figure out how to get money like that. But I also think it's, not having the audit really in hand yet is a little bit of a problem because you need to have the audit to make sure you have a clean audit and to be able to move forward on creating a realistic budget that people are going to believe in. So if, for all of the trouble that we've been going through the last few years, I think some people might have lost confidence in the way we manage money. So I think we have to present a really good, solid plan for that before we start asking for tax increases, even if tax increases are inevitable, which I think they are personally. And I don't mind that personally either. I think, as Oliver Wendell Holmes said, it's the price of civilization. And I had another question. Do we get, do we get donations to the Open Space Fund from various residents in town, and how common is that? And
How common is it? You know, it
Yeah,
ebbs
and-
and flows over the years. We got a substantial contribution. Was it in 2018?
So the last major donation was in 2018, and it was over $500,000. It was a bequest.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, you never know when those bequests are going to come in, unfortunately. Um, let's see. Oh, and another thing, we were talking about the Fogarty situation. I don't really know that many details on that yet, so I need to get up to speed on that, like what kind of,
We all
money we're
need to get up
talking
to
of-
speed
yeah.
on that, Del.
yeah,
We hope to maybe, in fact, with our mayor here tonight, she can share whatever is shareable,
Mhm.
so that we're all a little bit more informed about how proximate.
Mhm.
But right now, there is an appraisal that is nearing completion.
yeah.
Darcy
So
is
I'm wondering like,
walking
how
to the
much money are we
podium.
talking about?
walking to the
Okay,
podium.
yes, the Fogarty property,
Mm-hmm.
way up on Skyline,
Mm-hmm.
south of the winery proper. Um, This town was approached and inquired with the Fogarty owners, family still owns it, about acquiring a 12-acre parcel.
For,
13, okay.
14.12.
And right now,
It got stuck in my mind.
so great to have her memory. It's getting appraised right now. So we're
Mhm.
trying to figure out what's the value of the property,
Mhm.
right? And then the town council will receive that report. It is in closed session because it would be real estate negotiations. So there is some, I don't want to say secrecy, but there's some confidential conversations that then council will have, and hopefully we can come to terms and agree on a price. And then in open session, the council would be presented with a purchase and sale agreement. It's like if you bought property and they would vote on it and then go through escrow. But I'll just mention the housing element is one piece of this. And so there was this partnership that they mentioned. And so as part of the town's housing element amendments, which were authorized by the city council at the July meeting. So if you
Mhm.
want to go read that report, you'll see that there will be some rezoning of the Fogarty site. Again, even if we don't acquire it, we're moving forward to identify 2 acres potentially for housing.
I think it was a total of 3.
Great. Okay, see, I'm glad she's here because I'm just getting up to speed too. And it is rural up there, right? There's no utilities, but it could be a great opportunity for a unique project that's more sustainable in nature. So, could be off the grid. There's certainly not sewer up there, but it might be a good opportunity to create some more affordable housing because actually, one resident told me recently that like a sewer hookup in this town costs $100,000. So that would be a big expense for a housing unit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible, again, if the town acquires it, and again, it is a sharing of the open space and the housing interests. And we have housing funds that could be used to acquire the housing parcel, and then open space funds that would be used to acquire the open space parcel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know it's a little remote, but I've met a lot of people who always tell me why I live up the hill, and they love it up there. So it's just,
Yeah.
their kids could go to school here and get down here somehow, but it would just be a nice place, very scenic area to live.
Yeah.
So we'll
Thank you
keep you
for that.
posted on that. The first thing, it would go to council in closed session, so you
Mhm.
might see that on an agenda. Again, that's because it's a real estate negotiation where we review the appraisal and they decide if they want to go forward with the
Move forward.
process.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm. Wouldn't it be a little bit hard to do lower income housing up there though, because of the remoteness?
If it were for farm worker housing, there
Yeah.
are a number of wineries up there. And of course, over the hill, there's a big demand for farm worker housing.
Right.
Um,
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, there's a good example of that at one of the post properties down at the junction of Highway 1 and Highway 84.
Fantastic.
It's Blue Something Farm. It's an organic farm. And the guy leases the property from Post. And part of the agreement there was that he had to provide permanent, decent housing for the farm workers on the property. So they have these mobile homes there that are brand new and actually quite nice looking. And so something like that might actually be a reasonable use of land like that. So if you want more information on that, I can provide that.
We may if the deal goes through.
Oh,
Um,
another thing, too, I have a lot of questions, but would that mean you could ever open up Alpine Road all the way up?
You know, over
Or is
my-
that a big can of worms?
over my pay grade. I guess where we're probably headed then with the questions is starting to funnel in and focus
Mm.
on whether we have a letter that we want to fine tune to work for us. And Nona has some comment related to
Mhm.
some of the questions and discussion Dell's raised.
Yeah, I wanted
Okay.
to say how helpful it is to have the new information on the survey of the community. And I guess I'd like some clarification on that because our understanding was that the matrix of 8 revenue options had been narrowed to 3 and would be further narrowed to 2 in the next couple of weeks. But it sounded like you talked like annexing is still an option, which I guess the question is, how many options is the voter survey going to include?
Well, it's up to the council to decide that. We are potentially looking at pulling about 200 people. And so for those of you who took college statistics, you might remember there's a margin of error with any poll, especially around 200 people. And so if we poll on 2 items, then the margin of error essentially doubles. And it could get really hard because again, one of the ballot measures might look at a 50+1% pass rate and another might be a 2/3. That's already a pretty big span. So then if you split the sample into 2 100-person polls, like I asked, I get you on the phone and I ask you, what do you think of a parcel tax? And then I get Terry and I ask him, what do you think of the real estate transfer tax? You both comprise a split sample, and then the margin of error is roughly 19%. That's a very high margin of error, especially when we're looking at the real estate transfer tax needs 50%+1, and the parcel tax needs 66.67%. If you just did the math in your head, it gets very difficult then to use the poll, how we want to use it, which is to know which measure has the best chance of passing and which one we should bring forward.
So a question in relation to Nona's question. I had gone back to the June council meeting when the pair of consultants that have been hired and contracted with first came up, as well as reviewing the July 23rd meeting. And I heard clearly Craig say we must narrow this per our contract to 2. So my understanding is we're going to have 2 options and that's it. But if there's flex in there, it's good to know about.
It's a work in process.
It is.
I heard 2. Now, upon further narrower discussion, I've heard 1 and maybe a bonus 1. So honestly, I don't know. We're going to hear about more next week and pay attention to the discussion next week because I haven't understood how this is going to work. And I really do need that information that staff is
course.
looking into and preparing. However, what the council did do, we gave direction to narrow it. We gave priorities. We didn't say we would never annex or anything like that. That was not the decision. The decision was narrowing what we could poll on and prioritizing it. My understanding had been 2 options would be pollable and profitably pollable. Apparently that's not the case. So stay tuned and we'll see because then it gets into more subtleties, which hopefully we'll understand over time about the benefit of polling on one. I mean, if you pick one, why are you polling on it? It's how to succeed with going out with the one. So we're getting information in real time. On the plus side is transparency's out there. The problem is you're not going to get crisp answers at the time all these good questions are coming up. So with apologies and request for patience, we're working with this at the same time.
Yeah.
Darcy,
Yeah.
Feel
And-
free to correct.
And
us.
thank you for
And the
it.
poller takes direction from the council, but again, we advise that if we really want to figure out what is the best chance of success, it would be best to not have a big margin of error, if that makes sense. But we're asking other questions like, why can't you just poll more people? But we are a small town, so therein lies part of the challenge. And I'll just say, if you ever, I'm not trying to bias you, but like I often ignore those requests. And since I've been taught to get feedback, to be surveyed, and now I realize it's actually really important to respond to these surveys. I thought they were
So-
just junk. But we're still, so here's the table, and yeah, there was a prioritization, but because this is so complicated and there are so many different factors and yet is evolving in real time, simple majority, is it a super majority? I should also add footnote, there's a Howard Jarvis initiative that's going forward that might complicate this too. So, sometimes we do something locally and then at the state level, there's a bigger super initiative and that might affect us locally. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. But I'll just say more to come next week, get a more robust presentation. And the goal is really to try to move the survey forward in an expeditious manner. And that will then inform the next set of decisions. This is all just a series of decisions
So,
over time.
Judith, can I ask you a quick question? So is our letter premature? Should we hang on for now?
I can't tell you that. You guys are a committee. It's in your decision-making authority what you want to weigh in on. I think it would be helpful for the council to hear your questions and thoughts. So that's absolutely correct. As far as making a specific recommendation, because some of the assumptions I think that the letter might have been based on, we're still proving out. It's going to be hard for the council, like, just to take a recommendation and implement it, because there are some things we need to confirm about what the underlying assumptions need to be proven out much more. The level of complexity, even about, the simple rule, 2/3 a majority is required for a special fund to be changed. In terms of a tax, even that, the logistics of, well, you have to maybe have the council retract part of, like, that's news to me today as well. So it's a lot of moving pieces. I think you should make some kind of comment, because the council needs input from the community generally, and you have a special view on your role in town. But is it worth you refining a specific recommendation right now? That it really is up to you, but hearing from you about sensitivities, questions, concerns would be very helpful. I don't mean to sidestep it, but I don't want to take away your authority either to, do something you feel is needed.
Thank you for your answer. Terry might have another question for you, Judith and Darcy, so don't leave yet, but, or a comment for, are they good?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
I would encourage us not to be discouraged by the possibility of more, even if imperfect, information, because that still feels better to me than no more information and just more imagination on our part. And I'm not criticizing.
Can you
or-
clarify, not to be discouraged? Does that tie into whether to send the letter or not?
No,
Sorry.
it ties into voter polling or surveying. It ties into, we're asking ourselves what we think, and we're asking potential voters what they think. And to hear that there might be a margin of error, or that there is a margin, seems reasonable. That there might be a margin of error that we are not fully representing, every perspective of the town is also true. We're trying our best. We have lots of context and sincere interest in representing the town. So I guess I really appreciate the transparency of this conversation. And I'm just saying, I don't mind more information, even if it's not perfect information. I'm still curious what it might share. And, I go back to my earlier comment that having a precise recommendation to an imprecise question or problem doesn't feel like what we need to do right now. But I also feel like some of the comments we're discussing conceptually are consistent or more or less aligned. And so my instinct is not to be discouraged. And if we want to say something, we can say it, but my instinct is to be more conceptual and directional than prescriptive, because being prescriptive about an unclear problem doesn't make total sense to me. So
The
anyway.
only comment I would offer is, do consider this a dialogue. This isn't your only chance to have an impact, but to the extent you have consensus around sensitivities, comments, concerns, suggestions on what to look at, that is helpful, because we're all doing this in real time and you've got a very expert set of viewpoints here. And that's going to be valuable, because sitting where I am, I don't have crisp answers. I want to get there, but it's going to be an incremental set, and it's going to be a little iterative as we learn more about these legal parameters and the process issues that we're dealing with. I mean, Darcy's here and she's doing great to already be up to speed as far as what we know, but it isn't a fair expectation that we have a menu right now about what we're going to be doing in a year and a half. I realized the timeline is extremely important to get right. And that's why the polling was so important. It takes time, the results take time, and we're not going to get it perfect, but we've got to give instruction as to what they need to start polling on, because my understanding, we're going to get timelines as well on the process, but my understanding is in September is when we really want to start the polling, so that we can like parallel process some of these questions that we've got. It's not like we're going to pick one thing and necessarily stick with it and that's it in the next month, but we've got to pick the best thing we can poll on in the next month for now. And maybe that'll be where we end up and maybe it won't. But I to your point about patience and just, it's a community issue we're all struggling with, but I know this community offers incredible commentary and, appropriate questions on, do we know enough right now? So let's keep in touch, and this is not a one-time decision from my perspective. Even if you decide to make a decision, this is going to be something that's going to iterate.
I guess, thank you very much, Judith, for the show of support and staking out the ground here in a very liberal way. I want to reflect for a moment, and then we have a question in the audience, in the online audience. I wanted just to say, I think part of what inspired Nona and me to write this letter on behalf of, and I realize I'm speaking to the choir very much here. We are all ardent open space supporters. I have heard in various pockets around town things that I think, oh, wow. I look forward to having a deeper conversation with them about the visioning what we're going to look like in 10 years or 5 years, what this town's going to look like, a more densely populated town, and just how much more valued our open spaces will be and how there will be a need for more of them. And to preserve the flexibility that we have enjoyed particularly with a fund that has grown by virtue of the interest rates and that our money was finally put to work. Thank you very much, Tony. That we now have a fund where we can be flexible and including even consider with a purposefulness the acquisition of a property just north of the tennis courts there that was out of reach, but not out of reach with the kind of creative packaging that we were contemplating. It was sadly not a good political time in this town. If it had happened, I even think today, it could have had a wildly different outcome. I mean, I don't know about today. It's a tough time, but we are poised to be flexible, to look at, as we are at Fogarty and as we would have been if the timing had been better in our conversations with the property to the north of the tennis courts there. We were thinking about a multiplicity of uses, not strictly parochial open space, but open space and housing, open space and courtyard, and various things that I want us to preserve a fund that is robust and replenishing so that this committee can serve to complement the efforts and look formidable to a potential seller so that they'd think, yeah, they could actually swing this. So that's one of the reasons why I would be personally in favor of coming together as a committee to fine tune this so it's satisfactory. If it's a little bit out of date, I think we'll be forgiven because things are changing rather quickly. And with that, may I call on our member of the audience, Dana, your hand's up.
Or is she there?
Tell her to mute herself. She's not.
Dana, was your hand up by accident? Okay. Okay, so Dana's hand is no longer.
It's, her hand is, okay.
We tested the audio and that works. It's good.
Unmute, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys, well, now I'm all over the place, but I started out there with you and I loved Nona's comments. And, open space is who we are. Once they wanted to develop Windy Hill and Portola Valley stopped it. I mean, we are utterly unique in how we have lived with open space. So I'm actually just so proud that we have an open space committee and we have always had this fund. So, but when I was listening to Gary, is it possible that this money that you guys are going to give is a loan to the town? Will it be repaid? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can,
Oh.
Dana. It's not really going to be a loan to the town. The question is whether to change the UUT tax, which is partially going into the general fund.
Okay.
Partially going into the open space fund in any way. And, frankly, we're getting different new updates almost every day on the mechanisms that would happen by, but that's at a high level, what
Okay.
the committee's been discussing. Like
Okay, I just wasn't sure about that as I was hearing it. And so, I'm one of those, I guess, rare people who's saying, please don't take the open space fund. So, and I feel very strongly about that. And I would be really willing to help find some major donors to give to the open space fund,
Go for it.
to cover that. I still remain in utter dismay about what happened to the finances. So, and also being one of the few town bottom feeders, I do not want to be taxed. So, you remember there are people in this town who are not wealthy, and I've been a volunteer for 30 years. So there you go. Anyway, I hope you guys, I'm trying to listen to what you're doing and I support it. And I think it's just amazing that we have an open space committee and fund. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment, Dana. Judy.
Thanks. I'm Judy Murphy. I speak as a resident and sort of peripherally as a longtime chair of conservation until a few years ago. I really appreciate this committee's willingness to be generous, to protect the town in its moment of need. I think we all wear two hats, those of you who sit here and on conservation too. You know, you wear your residence hat and you want to do everything you can to drag the town up out of the mud it finds itself in. And then you have a special responsibility because of the committee you sit on to protect fiercely your money and your direction and your energy and your recommendations. So it's complicated for all of us. It's complicated for everybody, but we have a sort of an extra layer of complication in a way. And I just want to make a couple of comments about several of these things. One is, I think the redirection of the 2% UUT from the open space fund to the general fund for no more than 3 years is an admirable and appropriate thing to do. I feel very strongly about the time limit. I understand that the town probably has long-term financial problems. But I think we, your committee and mine, we've decided to make no requests of the town in terms of the open space properties that we oversee in the parks and things for a couple of years, except for sort of really urgent things in the same spirit. But I think to the extent that the town has longer term financial problems, that doesn't stand on the shoulders of open space to fix, nor on the shoulders of conservation to fix. We have a special mandate from the town, from the citizens originally through the ballot box, et cetera, and then from the town councils from the very beginning when we were among the first committees that the town ever set up. So I think it's important. I don't think it's premature for you to write a letter. I think you can do it expressing a willingness to do this and a support for it rather than making a recommendation about it. I think it must be important for the council to know that they can put this forward and they have the support of open space to do it, rather than have some lurking fear that they might have opposition from open space to it as they go forward. I think the idea about an open space fund versus an open space account is a little bit murky. And it's not clear to me that the Senate bill really says, it says account, but a lot of people use account and fund sort of to mean the same thing. And I think historically in town, the separate funds have not been separate accounts, and that may be standard for how it's done. But it's also made it really murky. It's made it really hard to know whose money's going where and to follow the dollars through those paths and know that your money has been safe. We've had an issue with money being spent on things that conservation recommended. It's like, well, was the money coming out of the open fund? Did it come out of open space? You know, it was really, some of it was not clear at all, and there needs to be more clarity. So if it takes separate accounts to get clarity, then I think you just got to go there, even though it's more complicated. In your letter, you mentioned second page, second paragraph, open space, other needs. You talk about maintenance of open space, and that's been kind of a slippery slope for you. So do you want to put that in the letter? Have you really made the final decision that your open space monies are going to go to maintenance of open spaces? I don't think you have. And so I think you need to be cautious about that wording in your letter. On my thing in the draft, it's not the first page of the draft, but the second page, paragraph 2. The first paragraph is a continuation paragraph.
Got it.
The one that says the open space fund and its revenues serve other needs as well. Down to the bottom, last sentence, improvements, repairs, maintenance on open space lands.
Thank you. We were not getting into the nitty gritty on maintenance because that's a subcommittee
I know.
issue.
I just
Yeah,
would be
but-
careful about using that word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you.
And I think that's it. Thank you.
Judy, thank you very much for your thoughtful comments. I would just add that the account versus fund, if you're not an accountant on the finance committee, it can be easily confused and used interchangeably. If you're on the finance committee, they know very well the difference. Yeah. And so I'm thinking that in the Senate bill, they know the difference too. Amongst the committee, if I can return to, we're hearing that we have a somewhat imperfect letter in response to a lot of moving parts that are changing as we write. If there is, I for one am in favor of sending a letter. And if there is broad enough consensus around that, my question would be, what edits would make you more comfortable in sending the letter, or how comfortable would you be with sending the letter as it is? Okay.
Betsy, what do you think about pretty much sending it as it is with a preamble that describes our conversations in this meeting?
Give me the language, because we would vote on that letter tonight.
Pardon me?
If you would give me the language, we would be voting on that letter,
Yeah,
that preamble,
not in a position to
a
do about
preamble that,
nothing like the two of you can come up with, but
as I
that,
told, no, I'm no on the spot writer, but she is pretty good.
I'll jump in and just make a few comments. I mean, this is sort of the wrap up, and then we do any specific wording, I guess. So maybe each person can sort of say whether we go ahead and how we go ahead. Let me just say that we discussed a lot whether this letter should say this committee could support versus what we ended up saying, which is we can envision an approach. And the purpose of that was to kind of draw a line on how far we would go, but make it clear that we're not there yet. So in that sense, I feel like we haven't really made a commitment. The second reason I think we should do a letter is that I think it's time to get people in the town talking. And I realize that the survey will do that, but I think that this committee has a special role and has the ear of the community, because, you know, together with the ad hoc site evaluation committee and the conservation committee and this committee, all of which I have served on, we have been the ones who pushed Fogarty, and in the process have maybe given a reprieve to Dorothy Ford Open Space, which is the town's first open space. And so I think, you know, people understand that the Open Space Fund does something really important. Sorry, I'm going to get really emotional about some of
Go
these things, but we
ahead.
all, that's what we all care about, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't mean to suggest that the problem is short-term, but that a 3-year rescue period might be enough to figure out, well, how do we come together as a town to solve it for the long term? So I see the 3-year window as doing two things, sort of automatically having a reversion back to the Open Space Fund, but also giving enough funds. That's $1 million over 3 years or thereabouts. That's a lot of wiggle room for the town, and especially if it's partnered with something else, to bring in the money to operate for the next couple of years and get our act together. So I'm fine with the letter as is. I'm fine with a preamble and, you know, minor modifications, but I do think, I mean, this is how I feel.
And so beautifully expressed. I actually want to knit together what you just said, Nona, was something I heard from Dell, which was talking about that short-term period and how we could, as I heard expressed out here as well, the community has lost faith in the town's ability to manage its finances correctly. And while we are rebuilding that, and right now the rebuilding of that faith is happening more behind the scenes with Tony and his backlog. And that progress he isn't yet able to share with the town because it's a gradual process to bring us up to today. It gives this 3-year period, gives him a chance to build the kind of finances that will make us proud and allow us to all rally around and get behind whatever becomes the most obvious options. And this is a stopgap measure. So I think it achieves, as Nona pointed out, and I believe I heard from Dell, it achieves that purpose. I'm very comfortable with the letter as it is and building in the preamble that Gary is suggesting, especially if I can start to hear what points we want to
So-
capture of the
so
last.
Can I make a suggestion on it? I completely agree with you, Nona. I think it makes sense
Yeah.
to send a letter. The reason I had asked the question earlier is I'm not 100%, I'm not sure I understand whether what we're proposing is feasible within some of the constraints, but that will become clearer. And I think the content of the letter as it is fine. It's very good, actually. And in the preamble, I thought Judy's language was inspired when she said open space has a mandate. And I don't want to be accusatory, but I liked the idea of a 3-year redirect is good and temporary, because the town's financial problems don't rest on the shoulders of open space and conservation. So I'd like to include that in the preamble, in as kind a way as possible. But I think that that's extremely articulate.
It was. Thank you for calling it up. What do you think down there, Dell?
Well, I agree that we have to make it clear that open space doesn't shoulder the burden for any longer than a bounded period of time. We're being generous in offering to do this as a solution. And I agree with Nona that it gives a little bit of breathing room for the rest of the process to become clarified. And we won't be able, there are a lot of things that we're going to have to do in order to get back on track financially, but we just can't implement them all at once. We have to start kind of slowly with this in a positive direction.
Yeah, I like that.
Sure.
Project, yeah. We're real-time editing. Would you repeat that, Dell?
Oh, just moving forward in a positive direction was the last thing that I said.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that I agree with having it as a bounded. And with Judy about what she said about not shouldering the burden of this, because if you say that, everybody will start expecting it to happen. I think the town as a whole has to all contribute to getting over our financial difficulties. Whatever solution we come up with, everybody has to agree on it and bear some part of the burden, so.
Thank you as we scribble notes. And Terry? Unless Dell, were you complete?
I also agree that open space is one of the things that I think almost everybody in town can being really, really important. And that's
Yes.
one of the major things that people have moved here for. Conservation values, open space, respect for the environment, living in harmony with all of the other creatures that are around here. That's the reason that we moved here in the first place. And that's the kind of town I think people really want to continue to have.
Beautiful. Inspiring. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, and we do have to balance it out with some of these housing things. So maybe the Fogarty ideas are, that could be really good because the type of housing that could be put up there would really fit the bill in terms of who it's serving. if we think about it the right way.
We've been trying to keep this a 2-page letter so that more people.
No, that's
would
just,
read.
these just, sort
It's going to have to go to
of- just keep
elite
getting a few of
typing.
these things coming into my mind. It doesn't all have to go in the.
Terry, have you some wrapping thoughts about what you would
No-
edit?
No, I think, as I think we've all commented, including myself. I think the spirit of our representing the open space perspective and stating it and honoring it, but also acknowledging the financial situation we're navigating and bringing those two things together in a very respectful, collaborative way is really a good message. So I appreciate it, and I like what has been written, and I agree with it.
Thank you very much. Then Jackie, do we have a motion to approve the letter as written, or if we are going to capture the Judy Murphy's wonderful comments that were well spelled out just now that Del just redelivered to us, if we were going to capture that and put it in as a as a coda or bury it in the, don't bury it, but highlight one section or another, do you have a spot for it? Yes, please. And are you, would we could, okay, a precedent. So we could follow up the last sentence as is with open space not being unduly burdened.
We appreciate the opportunity.
The last sentence following a precedent for a reversion approach, because I think it would logically, I think it would logically wrap up that paragraph.
Sorry, I'm still not following the one.
Judy was suggesting that we put it in the paragraph reversion of the 2% UT.
Okay.
It would come right after the heading. Right, so right after the last sentence. And might we, you can restate it, Judy, or let us try to recapture it as well as you originally stated it, but the overriding purpose here is not to unduly burden or shoulder is, okay. Do we? That's a nice way to put it.
We can't hear.
Okay, we're adding a sentence. The long-term solution belongs to the community as a whole. Comma, the open space, the open spaced fund, so as not to, so the open space does, no, that's not as beautiful as you said it originally. You had talked about the open space fund not being unduly burdened or shouldering the dominant responsibility. So do you put that first
Maybe
in the
that's
long-term
implicit.
solution?
Maybe that's implicit. Maybe you just say that the longer term solution belongs to the community as a whole.
The longer
Period.
term, yeah.
Because
I
you've
like
already
that.
talked about the reversion, et cetera.
That's good. That works for me.
So take a look at the screen and just tell me that's.
Are you? That's what Judy just said. Yep. Yeah. What do you think, committee? Does that satisfy? Adele, you had some other things to contribute. I want to capture. But you were mostly speaking in support of a bounded period. And the
So do you want to
lovely
reiterate?
statement.
So this should be a temporary, we're recommending.
I know, I think that Judy said something that sometimes less is more. And in this case, less might be more. The implication is that we would not be unduly burdened, but without explicitly saying so. I think that does it. That open space that connects us and the living in harmony is a beautiful thought. And if there is additive value in putting that somewhere, committee members, tell me where.
Well, you should think about putting it under how the open space funds for Soul Valley if you believe the issue brings voters to that way.
Okay, so where thanks very much, Judith. We could take the town's open space benefits everyone and strengthen it really by saying it's what connects everyone. If we go on to say living in harmony, pretty soon it's going to be peace, love, and harmony. So maybe. Not that we're not in the mood, but we'll keep it simple. So the town's open space is what connects everyone. I think that that's lovely.
Rather than benefits?
Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, so with those, please, please.
If that's okay, I think, we have a sentence in there that says, depending on the overall revenue target and other factors, we can envision an approach that combines, and then it lists the three factors. So that's sort of in the middle of the first page. I think, I guess I'm wondering if Terry's perspective would be addressed by saying, depending on the overall revenue target and other uncertainties, one approach we can envision is the following, and then they'll list the three factors. Just to make it clear that we're not recommending, we're not suggesting, we're just trying to envision this at this point, and we don't know, we don't have all the facts.
Beautiful.
But just as a demonstration of, we want to contribute.
That's beautiful.
Sorry, let me just restate. I think what we're writing sends a really important message of restating how much we and our town value open space, and that the open space fund is a representation of that. And that because of that, and despite that, we're saying this is what we value, and that we value, even though we value it so much, that our willingness to concede being part of a solution is a statement that this is our town, and the town's challenges are our challenges. As much as we value open space, that we are committed to being part of that solution. And here's a representation of what that could look like. And as we learn more, I wouldn't say this part, this is just what I'm reasoning to myself. As we learn more, we might have an adjustment, or we might reaffirm exactly what we've suggested. But our suggestion is a reflection of sincere thought and commitment. And when we have colleagues suggesting we'll pay more taxes, I mean, gosh, what more could we say about how committed we are to protecting our town and our town's values?
Yes, I would personally far rather pay a higher parcel tax than that open space would be hit.
Yeah.
I'm happy to I mean, I'm not happy to pay higher taxes. I just prefer higher parcel tax to the alternate of the burden falling to the open space fund, which I value enormously. Whether I serve on the committee or not, I will always value it enormously. Terry, in the comments that you just contributed, if you are envisioning working some of that into the text here, this is really, I very much appreciated Nona's statement, and we can, thank you. No,
Even what Nona just said, I thought was great.
depending
Not
on the
even,
overall.
what she said
So-
was great.
Halfway down the page before the 3 bullet points, the sentence before those bullet points
Mhm.
could change to depending on the overall revenue target and other uncertainties, one approach we can envision combines those 3 things. That way, it doesn't add too many words, but I think it gives a little bit.
It's great. I think we dropped the
One-
word after
One approach we can
envision.
envision.
combines.
Maybe, yeah.
I think,
Can you see that? Oh, yeah, sorry, it just takes a long.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's great.
oh,
Yeah.
very good at this, Jackie. Thank you.
Great.
Well, the spirit of the contributions has been a pleasure to tune into. I think that though we may not be able to capture his enthusiasm and equal commitment to the Open Space Fund in exactly the wording that he offered, I do want to take home the flavor of Carter's contributions tonight, and that we know that for all of us sitting here, there are people that stand on, all sides of this. So Carter, thank you for weighing in. Though you not be present with us now, so it makes it hard to incorporate that specific suggestion. I think that there will be a time in the future when we might have the opportunity to write again. I appreciate very much that we're going to make a contribution of this nature at this time. Are we at a point where I can call for a motion to, I don't see anyone objecting, then may I have a motion to approve the letter as it is written and appears on the screen, which is with the edits.
I move.
Terry's
Yeah.
first, Jackie's our second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We went a little bit longer than we typically do. Thank you for your patience and for being here, Darcy and Judith and Judy. Very nice to have you all. Any parting comments before we adjourn?
I do. Hello?
Oh, hold on 2 seconds. Judith Haskell is just about to speak, and then we're going to call on you.
Yeah, no, this is very helpful guidance, and to the community members who may be listening in and may not be tracking all of this. If you want to know more, there's going to be a lot more information coming out in the town council meetings, finance committee meetings, further meetings of this committee and others. It is important to get up to speed. We are early in the process and very open to public input. So I don't want people to hear, see this chart and think it's anything more than a great work product from the finance committee based on partial information, but as good as was available. And it's going to be that as we move forward to make decisions at the town council level, but everyone's input is welcome. And weigh in often because it's going to be an evolving landscape over the next several months at the minimum. But we're targeting a ballot measure next year, so it's going to be a long process. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith, and the opportunity to attend a lot of meetings is open to everyone. I see a Maria. Would you like to comment? This is Maria Campbell.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's great. I couldn't find the little place to put my hand up. And I came in late, so I missed the whole beginning of the meeting. But I think your letter's really good, but I think you need a short punchline. And you're all very eloquent. You're all more involved with the details. But Portola Valley wouldn't be Portola Valley without open space. And I think that needs to be said, and then you get into all the details. Just a suggestion.
Oh, thank you very much. And I appreciate the spirit and the punchiness with which you delivered your statement. We all love brevity. We wholeheartedly concur with you. It's just that we just approved the letter. So we'll have time for the next time we write a letter, we'll capture that. Thank you
It
very
doesn't
much.
matter. It's
Maria.
just,
I appreciate your showing up.
well, I'm surprised there aren't more people at the meeting, and I think that that message needs to get out and
Thank you.
remind the residents of how important, without the details, just how important, look around and look at this wonderful place that we have. That's all. Thank you for
Thank
all your
you.
work.
It's great. It's great to have your enthusiasm. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Committee motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
Thank you. And thank you. We've got a
Seconded.
first and a second and so
I
moved.
second it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Del. Thank you all. Committee meeting adjourned. Lights off.